I'm Tom Rowland, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Waypoint TV. Waypoint TV has over 2,000 episodes and short films of some of the best outdoor content ever. Our shows are there. You can go see Saltwater Experience, Into the Blue, Sweetwater, and so many more. In fact, there's over 60 different producers putting their content on Waypoint TV. Go there. You can figure out how to get it on your Apple TV, Roku, tablet, phone. There's an app for pretty much everything. Anywhere, anytime, anyhow, you can see it and go and start binging. I also want to throw out a thank you. These people are not a sponsor of the show, but recently I went to Blue Ridge, Georgia, and fished with my friend Will Taylor to finish up a shoot where he came down to visit us. And then, as guides often do, we trade out. And I went up to Blue Ridge, Georgia to see what it was all about. And I was incredibly pleased, not only with the fishing, but with the hospitality. We had a company called Escape to Blue Ridge. They provided us with a cabin called River Rush. It was right on Fighting Town Creek, and it was really amazing. It was beautiful. I will definitely go back, and I would encourage you, if you want to get away for a mountain weekend, to check it out. Escape Blue Ridge. You can get that River Rush. You can go fishing with Will, and you can do basically exactly the same thing that we just did on this trip. And I thought it was awesome. We caught huge trout. And more than anything, it was nice to get up in the mountains, see the rhododendron, and just sit behind that cabin and watch the river go by. I just thought it was awesome. We also had a meal at a place called Black Sheep, which was outstanding. And they also provided us some hospitality for coming and visiting Blue Ridge. And you know what? I lived an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Blue Ridge. In my entire life, I had no idea what a cool little place this was. So if you're not familiar with Blue Ridge and you think the only place you can go in the Appalachian Mountains is the Great Smoky Mountains, that's a great place. I would encourage you to go there. But there are also plenty of other little places, and Blue Ridge is one of them. A little gem in the Smokies, in the Appalachians, I guess I should say. But anyway, thank you to those people for helping us out and making that shoot really one of the more fun shoots that I can remember going on. And we recorded this podcast while on that shoot. And I sat down with one of my friends, a guy that I spend a lot of time with. He is our photographer. If you're familiar with our social media, you have seen tons of his work. I think he's one of the best photographers working today in hunting and fishing or in any outdoor field. I think that he has an amazing eye and does an incredible job on the edits that he does. And when I look at his photography, I think, man, that's exactly what I have pictured in my mind of what actually happened that day. Really cool. And I really enjoy talking to this guy because he turns out to be my roommate on most of the shoots. He shoots for us on Saltwater Experience, Into the Blue, and Sweetwater. And through all of those shoots and plenty of other small things that we do for sponsors and other things, I spend a lot of time with him. And we have told each other a lot of stories. But I actually got a couple of stories out of him on this interview that I had never heard before. So I enjoyed this time with Jason Stemple, and I hope that you will also enjoy this time with him. And it's my pleasure to bring you my good friend, Jason Stemple. What's up, Jason Stemple?
How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. We find ourselves in Blue Ridge, Georgia.
It's weird. We're usually not someplace cold.
I know. And it is cold up here. I'm not so fond of the cold, but I am fond of what I saw today, which was some very, very large trout. And we hope to catch those tomorrow.
I'm excited to see that. I haven't seen a large trout in quite a while.
Yeah. Since the last time we were fishing with Chuck Head, our good friend, who is destined to be on the podcast as well.
Yep.
He assures me that he has more Trailer Park Boys quotes and other movie quotes than me or Hop.
That's awesome. Well, since we last fished with Chuckhead here in this neighborhood, I fished with him out in Colorado. And that was a good time.
It's kind of funny because that trip, we had a trip where I called Jason and I said, "Hey, I'm going up to do this trout fishing thing, and I think you ought to come along and get some pictures." We go up there, and it wasn't 5 minutes before you figured out that you and Chuck basically knew one another without knowing one another. You'd worked you worked at the same outfit?
Well, yeah, I started guiding with a friend of mine out in Colorado, in Almont, Colorado, near Crested Butte. And a buddy of mine, Jason Booth, and I started guiding together really 20 something years ago. I don't know, some crazy number like that. And Chuck said that he did some time out west. And I was like, "Oh, what do you do out there?" He's like, "Oh, I guide." And I was like, "Well, who do you know? Who do you work with?" And he was like, "Oh, I guide for Jason Booth." I was like, "Well, I started guiding with him, and he's the fishiest guy I know." The next summer, I was going out to shoot and fish with Booth among visiting friends and all this other stuff out west, and ended up fishing quite a few days with Chuck on the Gunnison River.
So that's where you got started in your whole fishing career?
Yes. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I did some fly fishing as a kid. My dad taught me how to fly fish. He didn't really know any other kind of fishing, and I kind of lost a hold of it. And when I moved out west, I was spin fishing, throwing rooster tails and stuff, and meps.
Really?
Yeah.
And how did you get out west?
Well, I got out of high school. That's a whole nother story, which I don't need to get into, but I got out of high school.
And we got a lot of time. We got a lot of time, Jason.
And I was an artist of sorts, and I'd done some photography, and I was an artist. I went to a community college for a few years and got an associate's degree in graphic design and photography. And when I got out of that, I was 19, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I was thinking about starting some sort of business, doing my art, but something that would sell, a sign business. And I didn't have one, but that was in the cards. I was thinking about that, working with a friend of mine who has a screen printing business. So I kind of had an in there for clients and stuff.
This is in Colorado?
No, this is still in Massachusetts. Okay. I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do with whatever was next. Right. I had been skiing a lot in living in Massachusetts, but skiing in Vermont a lot. But
right.
Then my parents didn't want me to stay there, and I understand that now. But they were like, "You should venture out." And I was like, "Well, I kind of want to go skiing. It's spring break, and how about maybe I go out west and ski and check out some colleges?" They were like, "Great, go," because they just wanted to get me out of town.
Right. Well, you out of. They wanted to get you out of town because what?
Well, I grew up in a small farming town in Massachusetts, and great place to grow up and everything, but I just hadn't seen that much.
Right.
And didn't have much of a worldview at that point in a town of 3,000 people in a small little town.
Right. So your
doesn't give you much perspective.
Your parents are encouraging that highly.
Yes.
Get out.
Yes. Get out, see things. I would encourage that to anybody. But so I went out with a buddy and skied and checked out some colleges, and I was out in the Rockies, and I was like, "Oh my Lord."
Had you ever seen that before?
I'd been out there when I was 10 with my parents, but
And so what colleges did you go see?
I had a 4-year college book. Back then, that's how you did it, because there was no internet. So you got this big giant book full of 4-year colleges. And I had a atlas and probably some powder magazine. And I was kind of measuring out the mileage between schools that I could get into and ski resorts that had steep terrain.
Right. So that led you down the road of which ones met the criteria.
First, there was only a couple to choose from, because I really thought Colorado was the one. I didn't really, for some reason, Montana and Wyoming, none of that really stuck out to me. It was Colorado. So I was looking at CU, Boulder, DU, and Denver, and I kind of drove into those places, and I was just like, wow, these are giant cities. Yeah. Even Boulder, to me, I grew up in a town of 3,000 people. So Boulder was like a giant city to me.
Yeah.
And then drove out to Gunnison, checked out Western State College of Colorado. which just happens to be 30 minutes from Crested Butte, which was an amazing ski resort.
Yeah.
And turns out just happens to be the home of the Gunnison River too. So
wow.
That was a bonus.
And that's it? That's where you went?
Yep. So the next fall I went out there.
So you come home and you tell your parents, I found it.
I found it. Yep. I'm going out to college there. And they're like, that's awesome. Great. Go.
And at this point, did you know what you were going to study?
Well, I already had my art degree.
Okay.
Art and photography. So I had an associate's degree in that. So I was like, well, I can minor in that. I'm pretty much done there. And then I can do 2 years and get a business degree because I kind of just wanted to be an entrepreneur of some sort. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but
right.
So I was like, I'll just go get a business degree. All I have to do is get my business courses and I can ski a lot.
Right. And is that what happened?
Mm-hmm. I went out and didn't know anybody, not a soul. And I just started skiing a bunch, skied 120 days a year and took Tuesday, Thursday classes in the spring semester so I could ski 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm. Just
went about my business and got my degree, did some photography, not a ton. I was doing some here and there, graduated in a couple of years and it was time for something new.
Something new, but didn't you stay out there for some time?
No, I wasn't going to move anywhere new.
Yeah. So you really liked the area. Yeah. And after a little while, you started meeting some friends, right?
Yeah. No, by that, I met some friends pretty quickly and some mostly skiing people.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, if they were skiing people or fishing people.
Pretty much all skiing.
Huh.
So I skied all the time.
At this point, you're throwing rooster tails in the summertime and skiing. You got the hardcore skiing group in the winter, but you have not cracked the code on the Western fishing yet.
No, it wasn't. It was quite a bit later. I was skiing all the time, and when I graduated, I started working at the photo concession at the ski resort, taking pictures at the top of the hill. The people coming off the lift, harassing them, trying to get their pictures, and
how did that work back then? Because I kind of remember things like that, but it's so much different today because it's digital, and by the time you get down to the bottom of the hill, your pictures are probably on the screen there, and you're like, I don't like that one. So, that one makes me.
And you probably took 100 pictures with your cell phone anyway,
right? And then even when you go to Disney World or something, they take pictures of you on the roller coaster, and by the time you're walking out, they're already up there. So, how did it work when you're taking pictures? Back then it's film, right?
So basically, when I started there, they were like, okay, we need photographers. So I would stand up at the top of the hill, people get off the lift, and your job was to harass them and be like, hey, can I take your picture? You don't have to buy them, just take them and you can come down and look at them later and decide. And for me, that was just terrifying. I'm not outgoing. I certainly don't want to harass people. So I'd come down with like 3 pictures. Or I'd see my friends. I'd be like, please, let me take your picture because I need to show them.
You got to fill my quota.
I need to show them something. So about halfway through the first season, they realized that I was horrible at this. But I had a good background in photos and being in the darkroom. So they started putting me in the darkroom. So I learned all about a color dark. I'd never done really any color stuff. So I started working in the color darkroom. So like you're saying, how does that work? Well, that was my job. So I'd be in the darkroom and all the photographers would come down from the day and bring me their film. So it was my job to pump out the film really quick. So by 4:00, there would be pictures for people to come down.
You're not taking pictures anymore.
No, I stopped doing that. I would do some action shoots because I was.
So what do you think about that? Like all of a sudden, you're on one hand, you're super relieved probably that you don't have to harass people, but on the other hand, you're not on the mountain anymore. You're in a dark room.
Well, it was better for me. So the darkroom gig was awesome if you're a ski bum.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go in at 7:30 in the morning or so. I would print all the prints that people had bought the day before. And then there's no film coming down the mountain till noon. So I could be the first one on the lifts.
Oh.
Plus I had I could go up early before other people could get up there because I had the jacket that said because the photographers could go up first. So I'd look like one of the photographers. I'd go up, I'd ski till about noon, come down, then people start bringing me film. So I'd get all the best skiing in.
Right.
Free pass.
Sounds good.
It was pretty awesome.
And are you able to make enough money to survive in an expensive resort town?
Not at all. It was horrible for that, but I was just out of college. I didn't care. And then I started bartending too. That's how you really make money.
Okay. And do you live in a photographer ski bum compound with a bunch of
No, back then
dirt bags?
Well, yes. It wasn't like they had employee housing, but it was there was a string of apartments and houses and getting kicked out. I had a dog at that point, and
what kind of dog accompanies you in your dark room?
No, yeah, you can't have fur in the dark room.
No, okay.
No hair in the dark room. That's
what kind
bad.
of dog is this?
This was a sheepdog Malamute mix. She was pretty awesome. She looked like Disney, but she hated kids.
Oh,
so she was pretty awesome. I didn't have.
Can
kids,
I pet your dog? No.
No. The kids would do that because she looked like a cartoon character. They'd run up to her and she'd jump on their face.
Oh, that's great in a resort town.
But she was pretty awesome. But so I had trouble finding places because, so you get kicked out every time there was an off season. People wanted to renovate their house or they came for the season. And so I spent a couple summers living in a tent, here and there, living with the dog in the tent.
Did you live in a teepee ever?
I didn't. I knew people that did, but
that was kind of the, I don't know. I mean, I knew people that lived in a teepee around Jackson, and it always seemed like the teepee was one step away from the trailer. Like first you're in a tent, like you were just living out of your car. Then you're in a tent. Then you needed something a little more permanent. So you got a teepee, and the next thing was maybe the trailer.
Yeah, when you're living in the teepee and it's winter,
man, that's got to be tough.
I'm out.
What if you're? I mean, I knew people that would live in a teepee in the winter, and then their job was pounding nails all day long. I mean, just never warm, right?
Never warm.
Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, that area, you're just never warming up. I guess.
No, I had plenty of friends in construction out there and working straight through the winter out there, 30 below.
Yeah, they just
brutal.
They do it anyway.
Yeah, no.
Pound those nails, and I never did that.
I did.
You pounded nails?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Out west?
Out west, yeah.
In the winter?
No, because in the winter I would have my real job.
Yeah, okay.
My real.
So this is the
real job.
This is in the summer.
Mostly in the summer or mud season or fall.
And temporary.
Temporary.
Do you have skills?
Yeah.
Are you a carpenter?
I wouldn't say I'm a carpenter, but I can carpent. Is that a word? That's probably not a word.
What?
I can build stuff. I built.
Like what? What could you build? Could you build a boat?
I could build a boat. I could build a room. I could gut a house and renovate it.
Well, that's good skills.
I have most of the skills. I don't do plumbing. Plumbing scares me.
Well,
electric I can do.
What?
Electric.
Have you ever tried to do plumbing and electric at the same time? That's a horrible idea.
No, I don't do plumbing at all.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid
I'm
afraid of both electric and plumbing because the problem with the plumbing is that you think it's good. You seal up the wall, you do all this stuff, and then
never seal up the wall. Yeah.
I try not to do the plumbing. I missed that, and in my growing up, I never worked as a carpenter, carpenter's assistant, or any of that. I mean, and that's what I told my kids is that, man, those skills are so valuable because, I mean, you can buy a house and you can look at the house and say, whoa, all of that stuff is out of my league. I'm not going to be able to save any money. My skills will not help in this project. Or you could go in there and go, man, looks like this just needs a little drywall and, basic carpentry, and I think we're good to go.
Yeah. No, I enjoy that. And I've done it several times now. And I mean, I think I'm hundreds of thousands of dollars ahead of where I would have been 10 years ago by renovating houses that we lived in and then moving up the ladder.
There's absolutely no question that if I had carpentry skills, we probably would have moved up the ladder much faster. Doing basic stuff like crown molding, doing stuff like, putting in the, what's the half wall called? The wainscoting. Wainscoting with the chair rail.
Yep,
it's very simple.
I've done that. And
it's incredibly simple.
All 3 bathrooms in my house right now have that because it looks super nice and it looks like you really know what you're doing.
Right. But it is probably the easiest
it's pretty simple
thing But even that, I'm kind of intimidated by if I'm intimidated by wainscoting and a chair rail, that does not bode
You just need
well.
a decent saw and a finished nail
I
gun.
know, I know.
But that's,
But at the time that I started needing to do these things, I was also booked every single day.
yep.
And so it's kind of like, how much am I going to really save when somebody's paying me top dollar to take them fishing? Is it better to go fishing and pay someone half of what I'm
No,
getting
yeah.
paid to do this work?
Yep. If you have the bookings,
Right.
you
But
gotta,
I
I've been
really,
through that a lot.
I really do wish that I had been able to help with those projects, like on our first house in Key West. That it would have been great because later, what you don't realize is that yes, you do get this house going and everything's great, and you are able to move up the ladder. You can move to the next house, but what you don't realize is on the horizon is a hurricane somewhere that you can't predict, and that one comes through, and not only are you not fishing, but your house is wrecked.
Yep. And
So
now you got to renovate again.
yeah, and of course the Florida Keys are recovering from Irma right now. The one that got us was Wilma. That was quite a while ago. But so now you've got this winter job, you've got a summer job, but you still haven't cracked into the fishing. I want to know when the fishing happens.
Okay. Well, it kind of relates to what we were just talking about because so I was homeless or camping, whatever you want to call it,
Well,
out west.
You're happily homeless, right?
So, well, I was looking for a place to rent.
Yeah.
But it's a ski town. It was expensive, and finding a room is hard, especially with a dog.
So do you ever think
And,
about just packing it up and going home? Like home to Massachusetts?
No, I never did.
Yeah.
I thought about how am I going to solve this problem? And I was like, well, I need to build a house because I can't find a room. Let's make a room. Talked to my parents, and my dad was into it, and they helped me out with the down payment. Really, not really a down payment. They helped me buy a lot.
Okay.
So I bought a lot, $35,000 in Crested Butte South. It's about like 7 miles south of Crested Butte. It was kind of I don't know. It's weird out there, but I guess you'd call it a suburb of sorts. You know, kind of on the hillside, and a bunch of homes being
Probably
built.
an old ranch or something.
Yep. Yeah, there's nothing there.
Mhm.
It was just starting. So I bought a lot and kind of talked to some people and found a guy who was sort of a contractor, sort of not. And I was easily convinced that this was going to be the way to not spend a lot of money and build a house. And I was like, I got nothing to do. Teach me how to build a house.
And did he know enough to pour a foundation and
yeah, I
do
mean,
all
he
that?
knew a lot. He kind of screwed me over in different ways, but I was the laborer on it. And it was him and another guy and me. And poured concrete in, it's like November in Colorado.
That's
With
pretty
like
chilly.
put tents of plastic over it with kerosene heaters, trying to keep it warm enough so it would set up, so the footers would set up.
Wow.
And then we built straight into the winter. And this was the winter of 94, 95, I believe,
So
which happened to be one of the biggest winters
one of the
Crested Butte has ever seen.
So do you have plans for this house?
Yeah, we had an architect draw. I kind of drew it up myself with some help, and then we had an architect draw that out for real, and then we started building.
Okay, and at this point it's just you and your dog. There's no lady in your life.
Nope, not yet.
So you're just building this house with these two guys that you barely know.
Yep.
You're learning every single day, but
Yep.
probably not fast enough.
And I know I'm gonna get roommates. It's gonna be a 3-bedroom house, and I know I'm gonna get roommates
Right.
to help me pay the bills once it's done.
How many bedrooms is this house?
3 bedrooms,
Did you just
3
say
baths.
that? Did you just say how many bedrooms it
I'm
was
not
right
sure.
before I asked?
I'm not
you?
sure. Maybe
Sometimes I wonder.
your memory's going a little.
Yeah,
We're getting old.
Like I think he might have just told me it was 3 bedrooms. Okay, so 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, and it takes. Is it finished in a year from starting?
Well, by spring, I know in May we were sheetrocking, and this was, like I was saying, it was one of the biggest snow years ever for Crested Butte until last year, the year before, but huge snow year. So in May, we're all dried in. We have heat inside and stuff. We're sheetrocking and kind of doing some sort of finishing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it snowed 27 out of 31 days in May. So, there's 5, 6, 10 feet of snow outside.
But you have it closed in.
It's closed
right?
in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's closed in. At that point, I'd been sleeping on somebody's floor. So at that point, I moved in, without necessarily much of the comforts of home. But
does it have heat?
It had heat.
Okay.
So it was fine. Plywood floors and heat. And
at that point, it's a lot better than sleeping in a homemade igloo outside, right?
Absolutely, because it was cold that winter.
Yeah,
as every winter was out there. But it was good. So that's like we were talking about. You said it's nice to have somebody teach you how to do that stuff. Or I learned everything.
Yeah,
I learned from the start how to build a house. Granted, I'm not real good at framing exterior walls and roofing and putting in all that stuff because I just saw it done once.
Yeah.
But the sheetrocking and, all the interior stuff I was really good at or getting good at. Learned a lot.
And so would you do it again, you think?
Build a house from scratch? Yeah. Yes. But I prefer to renovate something that's already there, but I wouldn't mind building. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I'm older and I don't have the skills to know what I'm doing during the actual building process.
How old are you when you're building this house?
Quick math lesson here. I was 24, 25.
So at 24 or 25 years old, I remember being, I was both out west. I mean, I was out west at that same time in my life.
You weren't very far away.
I know, just several hundred miles to the north. But I remember this one particular thing happening. And one of the fishing guides that I was friends with, he's like, "Hey man, I just bought a lot. Come down here and check it out. I'm building this house on it." And he was a hardworking fishing guide, one of the best ones in the valley. And he was building this house, and it was like, he had the bedroom complete, he had the kitchen complete, but he's working on the rest of the house, right? Maybe the bathroom's complete, right? They've got little bit of living area, but the rest is just open plywood. And I just thought that was really cool. And he says, "Hey, the lot next door is for sale. You ought to buy that." And I just remember recoiling and thinking, I'm not old enough to buy a house. I'm not old enough to buy a lot. And of course, where this lot was, I probably, I don't know, 10 times 20 of what I would have paid for it at that point. Like the lot you're talking about in Crested Butte. I mean, I'm sure that a lot hadn't sold for $35,000 there last year. Yeah. Maybe put a zero on the end of it, or maybe 2 zeros on the end of it for some of these Western towns that at that time, they're just, Jackson Hole, there were plenty of lots available right in what would be considered downtown Jackson Hole. If it was right around the square, of course, that has been developed for a long time. But these little out areas, like you're talking about,
that's just a sagebrush field, basically.
Yeah, you could buy there or up on the hill, or just a little bit out of town. And of course, the further out of town you went, the cheaper it got. Yeah. And but I just remember this situation of just feeling like I'm not old enough to do that, and it kind of freaked me out. It really freaked me out.
Yeah.
And had I just thought about it and said, "Hey, Dad, this would be a great opportunity," maybe he would have been interested. But I also had plenty of customers that would have been interested in something like that. But I just recoiled from that situation because I felt like I was just not old enough and not ready for that, and didn't want to hear about it. And in fact, the house that we were renting on Crabtree Lane, which is behind the behind the new post office in Jackson, was brand new. And the owner came to us after we had rented it for a little while. It was like, "Hey, we're selling this house, 150 and $150,000 for that house." And that's how I remember it. I know it wasn't more than 200, so somewhere between 150 and probably 180. But I seem to remember the 150 number, and it would have been the greatest investment of a lifetime, probably. But I just really felt like I wasn't. Did you feel like that? Like all of a sudden you're 24 and now you're a part of this community and you're building a house. And
I was definitely in the fake it till you make it, and I barely felt like I was part of the community at that point. I was 24 and I just didn't want to be sleeping on somebody's floor or spend the next summer camping.
Yeah,
And I was trying to solve the problem. I was like, do I buy a trailer? Do I move? Do I move back down to Gunnison, which is not a good option? There was,
But there's a lot of your friends that probably avoided that decision and then just faded off. They couldn't make it. They left.
definitely.
Yeah. I saw that happen too. Is that you either planted your roots or you just kind of washed out eventually
Yeah.
because, as people start getting married, you're not really all that welcome sleeping on the couch. I mean, for a while,
Yeah.
sleeping on somebody's couch is fine,
Yeah.
Well, that's Jason over there. But after a while, it's kind of like,
Yeah. There
the
weren't,
guy's girlfriend starts moving in or his wife moves in, and it's kind of like, okay, Jason, you and your dog are going to you can camp in the yard for a week.
Yeah.
And then there are going to be some other plans that need to be made.
There were definitely times when your friends would see you show up with your backpack and be like, oh God, he wants to take a shower.
So that's full on homeless right there.
Yeah, we called it camping, but it was full on homeless.
Full on homeless. So from full on homeless to
building the house.
To building the house, but then to fitting into this community and getting a job and I know that fishing started to play.
I was always employed.
Yeah.
But you're building the house actually leads me into how the fishing started for me, which is kind of a weird deal. So I was building the house, and like I said, in May, we were sheetrocking.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'd tried to fly fish a couple of times and then picked it up, and then like I can't catch fish, so I'd go back to the spinning rod, and I wasn't doing a whole lot of either. But so I'm sheetrocking my house. Again, I was the laborer, so I'd have anybody come in. Anybody I paid to come in had to use me as their laborer.
Right.
So I would learn something and save money because at this point I was out of money. The guy who had contracted with to build my house was like, "You're out of money, dude. Bye." I was like, "Okay, I guess it's just me." And my whole house is pretty much plywood and sheetrock on the inside. And, wasn't finished. But so I'm working with a sheetrocker, and the sheetrocker was this pretty eccentric guy. He was a Vietnam vet, a little older, obviously, and he apparently was this fly fishing guru. At least he would tell you that. So I was like, "Okay, dude, take me fishing. It's been snowing for 30 days, and the ski resort's been closed for a month and a half."
Yeah.
I was like, "Let's go fishing. Teach me." He was like, "All right, let's go." So it's May. It's snowing, but if you've been out west a bunch, you know that before the runoff, kind of after winter, before the runoff, when the river's up a little and green, it's some of the best fishing of the year.
Yeah, it's magic little window.
Yeah.
And you kind of need to be a local for that because
you're not going to go there. It's horrible. It's snowing. It's May. You're like, I'm going somewhere warm.
The chances of hitting that little window are not that good.
No.
So it's kind of a local's benefit.
There's nobody on the river.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it's horrible out there. It's it's 30 degrees and snowing. So he was like, "All right, let's go." So he has developed these little things, and he called them Pookie boats. So this is a styrofoam horseshoe. It's almost kind of like fiberglass. I don't know. It had some coating around the edge of it. It was like square, about the size of this table here. So it's probably maybe 3 by 3 feet, and it's 18 inches deep.
Is this like a float tube? I mean, like hard?
It's hard. It's solid. And then, so it's it's a horseshoe, but square.
Okay.
And then it's got a metal rod on the front side that's kind of holding the horseshoe together.
Yeah.
So you sit on top of this thing in your waders, and you put your feet through the middle there, and you have kick fins.
Uh-huh.
And this is before, I'm sure you know, before any of those little companies were coming out with the little catarafts that you could kick fin around.
I mean, the closest thing is a float tube to
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yes. But you couldn't take a float tube down in these rivers. You'd die.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you'd be too far down.
Yeah.
So this thing, you're sitting actually above the surface of the water.
Okay.
And by about 4 inches or something.
Okay. It sounds horribly dangerous.
Horribly dangerous. Yes.
Okay.
Probably horribly
You're wearing
dangerous.
waders.
Wearing waders.
You have no idea what to do if you go under.
May or may not have had a PFD on. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you may or may not have had a wader belt on.
Yeah, probably. I had a wader belt on.
And back then, that's before Gore-Tex waders, so you're wearing the old... You're wearing Gore-Tex waders?
Yes.
Dude, because those days that you're talking about...
I feel like we had Gore-Tex waders on.
I feel like you might have had giant red
We
balls.
we might have, yeah.
Duck hunting
We
specials.
might have.
Yeah, I'm thinking you might have. That's a death trap.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're sitting on a horseshoe.
So we're sitting on a horseshoe, and he was like, "This is how you do it." He set up my whole rig to strike indicator nymph. That was the first time I'd ever seen that.
Okay.
And actually had Sage RPL, 9.5 foot 5-weight. So usually, that's a pretty rare rod. You don't have 9.5 feet. But man, it helped when you're sitting on the surface of the water to give that extra roll casting and nymphing and mending. So he taught me, man, and it was like you'd get in these little boats and you'd float down and you could just kind of eddy out like a kayak and fish the runs.
Were you able to steer it? I mean, like,
yeah, man,
you have to kick it.
It was just like rowing a raft or a drift boat. You just put the back, kick a little to the side, steer it, and kick backwards.
At this point,
or you'd kick backwards to slow down and fish.
Do you have any river experience?
Hell no, I knew nothing. I'd never been in the river before, except wading a little bit.
So it's snowing in May. This guy puts waders on you.
Yeah, so let's go.
Sits you on this boat that you're unfamiliar with, puts flippers on your feet.
Yeah.
And then hands you a fly rod.
Yeah.
That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. Crazy, but pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But then it was the Gunnison River, which is class 1 at most, the whole way down. But it's cold.
But still.
So there's not a whole lot of danger.
Okay.
But yeah. But yes.
Okay. So he's made this boat and he has 2 of them. And he's got a couple of fly rods.
They're
and
little one-man things. He's got everything. And he was just like, let's go.
Okay.
And we
how'd that day turn out?
It was, spring, the water's green, big rainbows are coming up out of the lake to spawn. And we caught all these 18, 20-inch rainbows. It was pretty incredible.
Wow.
More fish in that day than I'd ever seen in 3 years of living there with a spinning rod.
And so what does this day do for you?
It was everything. I was just like, wow, I don't spin fish anymore. I'm a fly fisherman.
Mm-hmm.
And, I started thinking, wow, this is crazy. This is what I do in the summer now. It was night and day. I was just like,
did you think that there was no way to fish other than this Pookie boat?
No, I knew you could do the same things wading, but the Gunnison River is, probably 70-30 private to public. Mm-hmm. So it was like, we fished all this amazing private water.
How does the public private water work in Colorado in terms of the stream bottom and the high water mark?
So in Colorado, the property owner owns the riverbed. Mm-hmm. So you cannot touch a rock. You cannot, if you're touching the bottom, you're trespassing.
Okay.
And they're pretty serious about it.
Yep.
So
what about the high water mark?
If you're floating, you can be wherever you want to be.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the high water mark doesn't matter.
If you touch the bottom in the middle, if you touch the side, you're trespassing.
So what we're really all of these different states have different rules. Colorado seems to be very similar to Wyoming, where if you enter a river at a public access, you are by law allowed to float through anyone's private property.
Yes.
Even if it is Ted Turner's $1 billion ranch, you can by law float through there without touching the bottom, without stopping, without doing anything other than floating on the river.
Yes. You cannot touch the bottom. Right. You cannot anchor.
Right.
Your anchor cannot touch the bottom.
Now,
however, you can eddy out, stay for a week.
Yeah.
If you're not touching the bottom.
You're just paddling along in there, right? You're just rowing upstream. And if you can do that. So Wyoming is like that. And we used to fish above the Warren Bridge in Wyoming. So the Wind River Range is an amazing little place. Wind River Range is here. The Green River, the headwaters of the Green River flow down through this high desert sagebrush, and you can go up above Warren Bridge, and then you can float down below Warren Bridge, and you can start to get into the private areas.
That's all the Green River?
Yeah. And the fishing was good, but what we would do there is we would just be fishing, and all of a sudden you would just see this cowboy on a horse. Single cowboy on a horse with a rifle across the saddle. and he would just parallel you all the way through the property. Kind of spooky. And you'd kind of think, oh, I was here. I saw him yesterday. I'll just wave at him. No response.
Yeah, don't bother.
Just no response. But the rifle across the saddle was alarming. Some people claim they got shot at. I never got shot at. I heard some shots, but I don't think they were shooting at us. Anyway, so Wyoming and Colorado are similar in their water rights. Montana is the fisherman's friend in that. Well, I guess it used to be this way, and I don't know that it's changed. But
yeah, there's there's battles that go on.
When I was out in that area, Montana was a great place to go and fish public water or private water, because if you could enter at a public access, you can walk along the stream bottom as long as you want to. You can also up to the high water mark. So the high water mark is a very visible line that's on the bank. And when you get into the fall, the water levels drop, and you can walk. I mean, it might be in some of the rivers, there might be 100 yards from the river to the high water mark. So you can just walk. You could walk 30 miles right through the nicest ranches and everything like that if you wanted to, but you can't leave there.
Yeah,
you have to
walk
leave
all the way back up.
Yeah, you either have to walk all the way back up or all the way through to the next access, and sometimes those accesses are not good. But Montana always seemed to be the most friendly. Like all of the ranchers were just kind of like, okay,
that's what it is.
You can do that. That's what it is. You're doing your thing, and that's
I
good.
like the concept of that. I think it's the right thing, and it's probably the way it should be. But as a fisherman out there, I mean, jumping a little ahead of the story, but once I had a boat, I was like, I don't want that, because I was like, this is all mine now. I can go wherever I want. As long as I don't touch the bottom, I can fish wherever, and there's nobody out here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't know that you really...
I get it, but
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about such big areas out there that I don't think that you really see that so much in Montana. I mean, certain places, of course, where the access is.
Our river is a little small. It wasn't one of these big, giant,
right? But
Montana
anyway,
style rivers. But
so the different water rights will dictate how you're fishing in the different states for sure. But so that day turned you into a fly fisherman.
Definitely.
And turning you into a fly fisherman changes your life.
Yeah.
How?
Well, I mean, I don't think it happened right away. I mean, I started fly fishing, and I started by this time, I think I not only did the photo concession in the winter, the family that owned that photo concession also had a summer photo concession.
Oh, okay.
I mean, sorry, at the ski resort. They also had a photo concession on the river shooting rafters.
Oh.
So I kind of turned it over, and in the summer I'd work for them for a couple of months.
And this is more darkroom work, or you're just taking pictures?
Both. Yeah, I liked this because I didn't have to get up there and harass people. I would just go. I did have to give a little speech at the beginning of it,
Safety speech or what?
Later, but no, I just did during the safety speech that they would give before the rafters went down. They'd be like, and this is Jason, our photographer. And I'd be like, I'm going to take your picture. Come on down later, blah, blah, blah. So on those, they would put the raft in, a whole group of tourists with, maybe 10 rafts. They would go down through the first rapid. I would go down there and shoot each boat as it came through the first rapid.
Mm-hmm.
Get in the van, haul butt down, go in a little closet, develop the pictures into a contact sheet, and then when they got down at the end, selling pictures from the contact sheet.
That had to be pretty high tech.
It was extremely low tech as far as darkroom goes.
Yeah, well, but still, for that concessionaire to be like, man, you know what we need? We need a darkroom right here on site because we don't have time. There's not enough time to wait for these people to get back over here.
Right.
We have to have this now.
Right. Which is awesome that you think it was high tech because so we would go down and then this little, it's quintessential West. There was these little log cabin buildings where the fly shop was and the rafting thing and this little place where, little pavilion. And in that little pavilion, there was this tiny little closet with no run, nothing. It was just the one place you could get completely dark. So we would go down there, cut the camera out of your film, cut the film out of your camera
Uh-huh.
because you didn't want to waste, it's 24 or 36 and maybe you only took 12 pictures. Film was expensive.
Yeah, for people, for young people,
yeah,
pictures used to come on rolls.
Yep. So you'd pull it out in complete darkness, not red light like you think of in the movies with the darkroom. This is color film. Can't be exposed to any light, not red light, anything. So you go in complete darkness where you can't see your hand in front of your face, open your camera, pull the film out, cut it out, roll that onto a spool, put that spool into put the spool into a canister, put the top on there, and then you can turn the light on. And then you start pouring chemicals into this thing, timing it, shaking it, pour that out, pour another chemical in there, timing it, shaking it. And then you pull your film out and it's developed.
How many rolls did it take you to not screw it up anymore? It sounds like a process.
You screw one up every now and then. I was pretty good at this point though, because I'd done that up at the ski resort for a long time. Although we had machines up at the ski resort because we had a pretty much higher tech darkroom.
Right.
But I was pretty good at it.
Wow.
But
so then you've got those and you're printing those on, these are 8x10s or what?
Well, so on those, we would make a contact sheet. So basically you take your film, all your film gets put in a plastic sheet, and then you slap it on an 8x10 piece of paper, expose that. And then so you'd have a contact sheet, which was, 35 millimeter little pictures for people to look at. And then you'd put them on a light and then give them a loop. And they'd have to look through the tiny little loop.
A little magnifying glass.
Yeah. And be like, I think my eyes are open, like, yeah, they're open. Yeah, look, you look great, then you'd sell them and then you'd mail them the pictures later.
Mail them.
Yeah.
And how would they pay you? Cash or check or? That's even
check sometimes. Check or credit card. We were at the resort, so they could do check, credit cards too.
I used to get paid traveler's checks all the time. No, it was awesome.
Traveler check, yeah. I guess you can just deposit those. I've never gotten paid anything with it.
They're just like cash, and if you lost them, you could go get more. It was a great concept, and people used to bring them all the time. And I remember you would take somebody fishing in those early days, and they would be like, "Okay, come on over here," and the trip's $600, and they're going to pay you in 20s in traveler's checks, and they've got to sign every one twice.
It's going to be a half hour.
Yeah, and so you'd be sitting there.
Well, you just get started. I'll be loading the boat up.
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't like that because I was such a young guide and so inexperienced and everything that you just sit there and try to make small talk. But you've been talking to this person for 9 hours.
Yeah, there's
not a lot left to say other than, man, it's a really nice signature that you just did there. And there. And there. But then you would come home with this wad of traveler's checks. And then it's like, what do I do with these? I didn't even know what they were. But that's a funny time. Things have changed so much. Really, when I hear you start talking about photography and even learning photography, and I was having this discussion the other day about learning photography in those days versus learning photography today. It's a whole completely different animal.
It's crazy.
When you went to school in Massachusetts to learn photography,
black and white only.
Black and white only. And what's the process?
Back then, I barely remember, but I remember the darkroom.
Yeah.
But we would shoot. I was shooting 35 millimeter film, print film, black and white. Probably, I think a Pentax K1000.
Yeah. And I remember just trying to learn how to take pictures and do it consistently well. And I'm reading all these books and I'm talking about aperture and exposure and all this different stuff.
Grayscale.
And so you start trying these different settings, which now, if you tried a different filter on your picture, you see it instantly.
Yeah.
It's right there. I don't like that one. 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 Ooh, that one makes it me.
No, back then you'd have to if you really wanted to learn, you'd have to shoot a roll, and every picture you took, you'd have to write down your settings.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you had it in the darkroom and you developed it, you could be like, oh, okay, this is what I did on this one.
Right.
This is what I did on this one.
And you got a little journal and each frame.
And I was never good at that.
Yeah.
I couldn't. So I tried that a couple times, I think, and then I just kind of switched over and figured it out. You could see the difference and
But
figure it out from there.
part of what was interesting about being a photographer then is not only did you have to have the eye and take the picture and do the settings on the camera correctly, but then you were also, a lot of times, you were also the developer of your own photos. And so you could go and you could play with how long it stayed in the chemical and
Yeah.
all the different. I mean, I only know just a very. I mean, I
Yeah.
only have done a small amount of developing black and white film, but there was artistry in developing as well as there was artistry in taking the picture.
Yes. And there was, I mean, there was a little bit of artistry in developing, but then there was artistry in printing is where more artistry came in. And that was kind of interesting, but I don't know. It was kind of too slow for me.
Do you think that's gone now?
No, it's just different.
So where does
I think it's all in Photoshop. The artistry. Well, I mean, there's artistry in taking the photos, obviously, but if you're talking about the artistry and the developing and the darkroom side, it's all switched over to Photoshop. And I don't think a lot of people get that. They think Photoshopping means making somebody skinny or,
right?
getting rid of zits. But, to me, it's, 60% plus of what I do every day, is
a Photoshop.
Is a Photoshop. And it's, not necessarily changing stuff. It's just making a picture the way you wanted it to look in the first place.
Right. I mean, when I talk to you about that, if I see a picture that I like that you've just taken, you're like, man, that's straight out of the camera. You don't even want to give it to me. I'm like, it looks awesome, man.
No.
It's great. No,
Yeah.
no, that's not finished. Like I pushed the button, I took the picture, but that's not it. Like we haven't even.
No,
you're not even halfway done.
No, once you get good enough at Photoshop, you're shooting a particular way so that you have the most information to edit with later. So,
yeah, I've seen you do that a lot, and it's pretty amazing how you can take a picture that looks pretty bland, honestly, and I mean, because not necessarily bland because you chose it that way, but bland because maybe the day wasn't ideal,
or even if it looks awesome outside, when you shoot raw, it's going to look bland. And that's the whole concept of it, is for it to look bland so that you have room to edit it.
Yeah. Yeah. Then where I see the artistry, and there's several different types of artistry. And I think that's what's interesting about photography today is that you have photographers like yourself. I think you do an incredible job of taking the picture and editing it to look kind of like what your eye saw. Like when I go out there, I'm like, man, the sky was so blue and it was perfect and it was awesome. And this sailfish comes out of the water and it's lit up and I'm seeing all these colors and everything. And then I look at your pictures and it's like dead on. That's what I saw. That's what I saw. And also that's what I saw through my polarized lenses that I'm always wearing, right? But then there's another type of photography that you see these days, these ultra edited photos, which is a whole different beast, right? I mean, there's the one guy that just bumps up the HDR a ton and gets this weird look. But then there's this whole other thing that they make it look like a painting, or they make it just and honestly, those guys work really, really hard at it. I follow this one guy on Instagram, and his photos they're amazing. I mean, because that's not what he took a picture of.
Yeah.
But he's making art
using it as the base
Photoshop.
for your artwork.
Right. And there's a real fine line to, it's like, I guess it's like a woman wearing too much makeup or doing it just perfect or not wearing any at all.
Yeah.
Like some girls can not wear any makeup at all. And some girls put on just a tiny bit and they look like they're dressed to the nines. And then other people go way too far and it's like Halloween costume. Right. Well, that's what I see with the photos. I think that there are people that are obviously pretty good photographers and they're not that good editor. And then there are guys that are really good editors, maybe not that good a photographer. And then there's the guy like yourself, I think that has a real nice balance between having the artistry and in selecting and composing the shot, like old school. Like that's what they taught you early. Like photography is about composing the shot.
Art school does
right.
that too, where you might not be thinking about it, but it's still always in there somewhere.
Yeah. And so you're thinking about, but you're also thinking about other things. You're thinking about, okay, if this is going to be a cover shot, I got to leave plenty of room at the top.
Yeah,
and if
gotta
this is going to be
go
a
vertical, gotta do,
right,
yeah.
all that stuff, and it all happens, super fast. In the case of a jumping tarpon, or
Yeah, you don't really have a choice.
something
sometimes,
even
yeah.
faster, like what a jumping mackerel or something like that can happen so fast. Like the tarpon kind of gives
Yeah.
you a little bit of a
The mackerel, you're kind of pointing at
Whoa.
something, waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah. So okay, I want to go back to this story because we got you right up to where you're developing color film of rafters. Oh, you got to pee? Okay, go do it. So I'll just be here. Yeah. Well, Jason had to pee. I will attempt to do this all by myself for a little bit, but I like the conversation that we're having because J- that's what originally drew me to Jason. I was looking for someone who could take some pictures, and I looked all over the internet, and I actually think I found Jason's website. And I saw a few pictures that I liked. And what I liked about his pictures was that he was really capturing the lifestyle of what we do, rather than just a grip and grin kind of shot where people are holding fish up. He was getting he was getting these shots that were really candid. People weren't looking at the camera, and the color was really amazing. And so I did a little more research, and eventually we ended up working together. Feeling better? Good, good. So now you've turned into a fly fisherman, and you're actually taking pictures on the water.
working
You-
on the river.
Is your house built at this point?
My house was
You're
sort
not
of
sleeping on the floor.
sort of built.
You have a
yeah.
bed?
I have a bed.
Does your dog have a bed?
I don't remember. She liked the snow. You'd let her outside in the
Ooh.
morning. It was 30 below, and she would roll in the snow.
Oh,
But we had a lot of plywood still exposed, and it wasn't all that done. But
yeah.
it was.
So how do you
I was living.
how do you move into this more of a fishy lifestyle?
So, like I said, working on the river. So I figured out, that I could. So we had 2 raft trips a day, a 9 o'clock and a 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So I could shoot the 9 o'clock, get that all done, sell the pictures, done by about 11.
Yeah.
So now it's 11, and I don't have to shoot anything till probably 1:45 because their 1 o'clock trip has to make their way up the river to get everything ready. So now I got like 2 hours right when the best hatches are in the West.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know that, but in the West where it's cold, all the hatches come later in the day once the water warms up, at least where we were. I don't know if it was the same up in Montana, but most of our mayfly hatches were, kind of 11:30 noon to 2.
Yeah.
And so I could go catch the hatch, then take my pictures and sell the afternoon stuff.
And at this point, are you trying to take any fishing pictures? Are you even interested in that?
Yeah, a little bit, but I kind of went through a stint here and there. I tried to get into the skiing photography business and never really. I did some stuff, but it never really took off. And same thing with the fishing. I would shoot some, but I was almost too addicted to the fishing.
Yeah.
It was hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I get the camera out, but they're biting.
Yeah. Well, that happens as a fishing guide too. I mean, some people can't make it as a fishing guide because all they want to do is fish.
Yeah. And I mean, I went through all that too. So I was working on the river there around the fishing guides, around the raft guides. And I kind of decided that the photography thing, I still was a photographer and wanted to be a photographer eventually. Maybe didn't really know, but I was like, I should be a fishing guide. So I kind of worked my way into that over a couple seasons.
Mm-hmm. And so when so many people ask me, I mean, it's definitely the most asked question. Oh, you fish for a living. How do you do that? And so I'm always interested in knowing like what that looks like. And I think I kind of know in your case, but not really. Like we've never really talked about that. Like
How do you get started?
from zero. Like you're a raft photographer. How do you get to be a fishing guide?
I mean, it didn't happen fast because I've never been one to jump in before I thought I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was like, I need to be better than I need to be a better fisherman than every fishing guide I know here.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked my ass off at it, not at guiding, but just at fishing. And I would fish every day, you know, and I was like, okay. Eventually I was like, well, I'm better than most of these guys.
So, but what's happening
do
though
this.
is that you're fishing every day because you've set up your life in a way that allows for that,
Right.
right? Like it's one thing to want to be a fishing guide and work 9 to 5,
Yeah.
and you're trying to get in a little bit of fishing
No,
before
can't do it.
9, and you're trying to get in that last little bit of light in the afternoon.
You can't do it if you're going to be good,
right?
you know?
And that's it's
You have to be
like
out there
reps.
every day and learn what's happening.
Yeah, it's like reps on a football field or to be an athlete.
Yeah.
It's like if you are hitting 10 hatches a week, and when we say hitting 10 hatches a week, there's these crazy when the water temperature gets just right and during, and it can happen every single day at about the same time, but you have this aquatic life that lives in these rivers, and these mayflies will live underneath the water for over or a year and then hatch out at when the water's perfect temperature and everything's just right and the right season and everything like that. They'll swim to the surface, break out of their nymphal shuck, and fly away as a winged insect, only to die a day later. So they've been alive for a year, and then they lay eggs on the water, and the life cycle begins again.
Well, in every stage of that one, as soon as they come out of those rocks,
the trout are on them.
Right. So knowing all about that is how you know when and where to feed the trout.
That's exactly right. So you are getting incredibly valuable experience while you're not a fishing guide, but you're fishing more than all of these fishing guides, and that's how you end up becoming better, because you are actually personally fishing in probably 2 weeks more than a working fishing guide is actually has the rod in his hand the entire summer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's what happens. You become a working fishing guide and you don't
I probably
fish.
would have stayed at what I was doing, and
right.
and I could have fished a whole lot more. But yeah, I wanted to be a fishing guide, and I was just like, well, I'm going to do it. And I talked to the owner of the resort there, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And he was like, okay. So basically, I didn't want to be a walk wade guy.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What does that scene look like? Because I'm not familiar with that part of the of Colorado that much in the fishing, because I never got down there in the summertime. I was too busy doing what I was doing. But you'll have these different places where it's predominantly drift boats, or you'll have other places where it's predominantly rafts, like rocky rivers, very, very white watery. You'll have other areas where it's predominantly spring creeks and everybody's a walk guide. And then you have other places where you can do a little bit of all of them. What did Colorado look like?
Where we were working was it had a number of rivers. The main river is the Gunnison River, which is probably what you would have considered a more whitewatery, not big whitewater. It's class 1, maybe a little couple
Plus,
class
you have
2 sections.
A giant canyon. We just had Frank Smethurst on the podcast the other day.
But that's the Black Canyon of Gunnison, but that's not what we did.
Okay.
That was 60 miles away.
Okay.
So this is the Upper Gunnison.
Okay.
So it's a rocky river, shallow rocky river, but not at that point, not great for the drift boats that there were then.
Mm-hmm.
So it was mostly rafts.
Okay.
But there weren't a whole lot of people floating. There was maybe 10 guides at that time that actually floated, and 3 or 4 of them worked at our resort.
Okay.
And 10 might be a stretch.
So, do you know how to row a boat?
At that point, not really.
Yeah.
So I took, so it was a rafting company.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'm going to be a float guide. So first I'm going to take the raft course and become a raft guide. So I did that. Then I was a whitewater rafter. So I was taking people down the river whitewater rafting.
You seem like a whitewater rafter.
I wasn't, but it was a means to an end.
Yeah.
But I was pretty good at it.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy it all that much, but it was fine. It was fine in the back of the boat yelling at people, telling them what to do. And you learned a lot about the water doing that.
You definitely would.
And I kayaked a little bit, and I learned even more about the water doing that.
Yeah.
How I don't like to have my head under it so much. But
Mhm.
then I worked my way up, and the owner had a 14-foot air ocelot cataraft that had been sitting on the lot for a while.
Okay.
So I was still a raft guide, and I was like, I want to buy that raft. And I was like, here's my plan, and gave him a plan of how I was going to pay for it. I was like, gave him $500, and it was like $100 a month or something like that till it was paid off. It was like $2,000 or something.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay. And he saw that I wanted to be a guide and did that. And then by the next season, I was number 4 or 5 on the
Do you remember
fly
your first
fishing
trip?
guide list.
Do you remember your first guided trip?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I don't
I
actually.
can remember my first guided trip like it was yesterday.
I mean, I'd done a lot of rafting trips, and so then
Yeah.
I went I did a bunch of walkways that first summer before I had the boat, and then I became the float guy. But I don't actually remember.
I hadn't. I went in so cold and so green and so ridiculously unprepared. I mean, looking in hindsight, I guess my boss thought that I was prepared, but I remember I had just gotten in trouble because I wasn't dressed like a cowboy, and I wore, I mean, this is Jackson, Wyoming. You
Yeah.
got to dress like a cowboy. I mean, they expect a cowboy. You're going to show them a cowboy, and so I didn't have any cowboy clothes, so I wore khaki pants, and I, I, it was, I mean, you're looking at it like you would go to the shop, and at the time it was the Orvis shop that we worked out of, and you would be there earlier than your clients. Well, I like to be there early. So I got there really early, and like when the doors are open.
That shocks me.
Yeah. Well, and it's my first trip, so I'm nervous. I'm so nervous. First of all, they don't even tell me. Joe doesn't even tell me where I'm going. He's like, "I'll tell you in the morning. We'll figure it out in the morning." So I'm just so nervous because I had just gotten there. I didn't know anything. Nothing. Not only did I not know anything, I didn't know the geography, right? So I knew the South Fork, you had to go over a big mountain to get there. I knew if you were going to go to the park, you went to the north.
You had to look at your map
And
to
then
figure out
I
where you were
knew-
going to fish that day.
Yeah, well, listen, man. Then I knew that if you were going to go to the Green River and the Salt River, you went south, right out of Jackson, and you got to Hoback Junction. This is a problem. This is where the problem lies.
Right or left?
You went left to go to the Green River. You went right to go to the Salt River. Okay, so I show up really early to my. God, I hadn't thought about this.
This is for a walkway trip, or
this is for a boat trip.
Oh my Lord!
Okay, I haven't thought about this.
To a piece of water you've never floated before?
No, I've floated it once. But I'd been on this river. So anyway, I'll tell you how it goes out. I show up really early, and I'm wearing khaki pants. And when I get nervous, I often have to pee, which shouldn't surprise you much because I probably pee more than anybody you've ever met in your life. And that's fine because I probably do drink a lot of water. And if I get nervous, it accentuates the problem badly. So I go to the bathroom once, and then I walk out, and I'm like, the customers aren't here yet. So I'm walking around, I'm looking at the flies, I'm walking around, talking, I'm asking Joe, do you know where I'm going yet? No, we don't know yet. So then I have to go to the bathroom again. So I go in the bathroom, and I try to wash my hands. But when I turn on the faucet, it comes on like a fire hose and it shoots up out of the sink and goes all over my khaki pants. And it looks like I peed in my pants. I mean, all the way down. I mean, it happened so fast and so furiously that it went all the way down to my knee. So now it looks like I peed in my pants. So now I'm super nervous. I'm trying to dry all that off, and I don't do a very good job. And I hear, Tom, get out here. Your clients are here. And I was like, oh God, this is just the worst nightmare. So I walk out there, and luckily the two guys had just rolled in from the bar, just rolled in, and all night, like it's 8:00 in the morning. They look horrible. And he says, this is Tommy. He's your guide, and he'll treat you right. He's like, get him a box of flies. We'll meet you at the cash register. So I'm like, Joe, you still hadn't told me where I'm going. He's like, oh yeah. You can go to the Salt. Uncle Lester will be down there. oh, you've never floated this section before, but what you're going to do is you're going to, and he starts giving me these directions and he's like, now you're going to put in and it's just going to look like this tiny little thing. And you've got to row on out there for quite a while before you get to the river. And I'm like, Joe, I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. I'm really scared. And so anyway, we leave the shop and it's about a 20-minute drive down to Hoback Junction. And I see Hoback Junction approaching and I'm like, oh no, oh no. Green right, salt left. No, salt left, right. Oh no, what's going on? I'm going as slow as I possibly can. And I get to Hovac Junction. I'm like, I think the salt is to the right. I just think it's to the right. I think it's to the right. And there's no cell phones. We don't have GPS, nothing like that. I don't have a map. I've been here once in my life. And so I just hit the right way. And I end up going down. We go down the
Utah.
Snake River Canyon, and then we end up at the salt. And somehow I find the put in, and I row out this little tiny thing, and I'm just 100% sure that I'm in the wrong place, and I'm in an irrigation ditch, and I'm never going to see the river, and it's going to be the most embarrassing thing. But the best part was my customers were so hungover that they didn't see me going back and forth in my mind and sweating profusely on the way down because they were both passed out in the car. So I make it all the way down there. I get in the boat. We row them out, and we actually caught something. Yeah, we actually caught a couple fish, and the guy caught a really nice rainbow. I still have a picture of it. And I look at that picture all the time because the guy is super hungover. And his eyes are all blurry and his hair's all messed up. And I remember he was like, I'm going to get some sun. And he takes his shirt off. Then he gets super sunburned. And I am just sweating this whole thing. And all I can think about is trying to find the takeout. And luckily I saw the shuttle driver's car and I pulled over and sure enough found the takeout. And I got him there about 2 hours early. And because I had no idea how to manage the river or anything,
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, I just
Well,
hope
you
I'm
know, yeah,
in
you
the
could
river.
be
I could be
5
in the wrong
miles
river.
from the
And it ended up turning out pretty good. And the guy gave me a tip, and that was it. That was my first guide trip, but
You
it
get that
just
first
started
one out
out
of the way.
so badly. I mean, getting water all over my khaki pants was
That's
truly
awesome.
one of the most embarrassing things. But nobody noticed except my boss that gave me a lot of trouble about it later. But the customers never noticed. They just never even noticed. But I remember that guided trip. I remember that
That's
trip. I
awesome.
remember my first saltwater trip like it was yesterday too.
I remember a bunch, but I don't remember the first.
Yeah. So you start
Yes.
guiding, and how long do you do that?
Floated the Gunnison for 5 years.
And you're still staying out there in the winter?
Yep. Yeah. But as the years went on, I started skiing a little bit less, fishing more, getting antsier
When
in
do
the
you meet
spring.
your wife?
Well, so that was I guess the second year at the raft place, the second summer. She was from Atlanta, and a friend of the people that own the photo concessions were originally from Sea Island, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a good friend of their family was a friend of ours, Holly Hicks, and she lived with my wife before she was my wife in Atlanta, and she had been coming out to Crested Butte for her whole life, visiting, and her family were good friends with President Jimmy Carter, who came out and fished there a lot. And
Yeah.
so they were out there a bunch. So Holly was coming out for the summer, and Joanne was working a marketing job in Atlanta. And Holly was like, come out with me. Check it out. And this was, I think, spring break before the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And she went and checked it out, went back to Atlanta and was like, God, this city is horrible. And no offense, Atlanta people. But and she was like, I'll go out there for the summer. That sounds like fun. And then I'll go back to working a real job in a city somewhere.
Yeah.
And she came out for the summer, and it ended up Holly had gotten her a job at the photo concessions to work there for the summer. And I was in my second, maybe third year there. I don't remember, but was working there, and that's how I met her.
And then how long have y'all been together?
Well, that was 95.
95. You're not good with math, are you?
That's
Not
a lot.
years.
That's a lot of
Years of
years.
math. So, and you got
But
two
we
little
were,
girls?
yep, we have 2 daughters. We were together for 7 years or so in Colorado, and then we moved to Charleston and got married and
What took you
had
to
twin
Charleston?
girls. We were done being cold.
Yeah.
Wanted to move somewhere warm, and her family is from North Carolina. At that point, my sister lived in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
We knew we wanted to move somewhere warmer, closer to family, and I wanted to be somewhere I could fish.
Yeah.
So we did a road trip and left. I finished up the last day of the ski season bartending in April, and we drove straight through the night after that, straight to New Orleans, hung out there for a couple days, and then drove the whole coast from New Orleans to Key West to Wilmington, North Carolina, just checking out different towns all the way around, looking for a place to live, and decided on Charleston.
Both of you together?
Yep. Just like a month-long road trip,
That's
trying to figure out where we were going to live.
That's cool.
No jobs, no.
So you
nothing,
settle
just
in Charleston, and what? I mean, you're starting fresh.
started completely fresh. No jobs, a little bit of cash because we'd sold the house I'd built.
Yeah.
Weren't sure what we're going to do. I knew I could get a job bartending because I'd been bartending out there for 6 or 7 years at this point, and had photo in the back pocket. And also I was thinking I was going to be a saltwater fishing guide. So
Out of Charleston.
Yep.
Mhm.
And so she was looking for a marketing job. I was looking for a bartending job and trying to figure out what was next.
And what happened? What was next?
Well,
So I
it
mean,
was
really fast forward to today. Like, I mean, you go to iCast, you get on Instagram, you go anywhere. I mean, you are the preeminent photographer, I think, in what you're doing, saltwater fishing and some freshwater fishing, but for the most part, saltwater. And so, how does that happen?
Well, a lot of it's because of you. Most of it's because of you.
Well,
I mean, really, I got a job bartending. My wife was working marketing, and I figured out pretty quickly that saltwater fishing is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a fly fisherman. It took me a while to learn that you can't just move to the saltwater and be a fly fisherman.
Mm.
You have to have a better, more well-rounded game.
Well, let's say
if you want to ever catch a fish,
if you are an angler, you can easily go from being a trout angler to booking a good guide in saltwater and having some success.
Right.
But if you want to do it yourself and you want to
Yes.
really kind of consistently be able to find fish, it takes way more.
Yes. And I'm a pretty big do-it-yourselfer. I'd like to have a guide every now and then, but I like to do it myself, and I like to figure things out, and I wasn't figuring it out.
Yeah.
Well, I caught some fish here and there, but
I think
hard
that there would
fishing,
be
I think.
much easier places to figure out. I mean, I'm no Charleston expert, but I've fished there a dozen times or more. Compare that to dropping in Venice, Louisiana, right?
Well,
I mean, you go to Venice, Louisiana, and you're going to probably figure it out, right? I mean, drop into the Keys, drop into.
But even the Keys,
Fort
that you
Myers.
drop into the Keys with the fly rod, I mean, it's no joke down there.
Well,
I mean,
you
trying
can
to
find fish.
Oh yeah,
I mean, there they are.
I can find fish in Charleston.
Can't you could right away?
Well, I
found
didn't
it
have a
hard to
boat
find
right
fish.
away.
Yeah.
Once I had a boat and I had friends. I mean, now yesterday I went out and found a lot of fish.
Yeah, well, I didn't catch. I didn't catch
any.
I mean, now
I still don't
different.
catch. It's a whole different.
Well,
you got to be in a different mindset.
But there's a big difference between kind of having a group of friends that are all fishermen and that are you're sharing a little bit of information. You've got it figured out now. That's a whole lot different than showing up in a place that you've never been before and getting it wired enough to find fish every day.
Right.
That's hard, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it takes a tremendous amount of dedication and determination because, man, it's easy to. I mean, I think about moving to the Keys when I did that and spent a year on the water. I don't know that I could do that again. right? I mean, talk about dejection.
Financially for one thing.
Right. Well,
and then, and just getting beat up.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what I learned in Charleston. I got there and I thought, oh man, I'm badass. I can catch fish anywhere. You know,
as long as they eat mayflies and
I've been running, I was running 5-6 years of float trips and I'd never had a skunk on my boat. And I was like, I'm pretty damn good at this.
Yeah.
I get out there and I just got worked.
Yeah.
But I quickly learned that I don't think I'm going to be a saltwater fly fishing guide. That's not my path, So I was bartending and my wife got a job working at Kiwa, which is a resort island.
Yeah.
She was in the marketing department. And a few years in, her boss was like, isn't your husband a photographer? And so she ended up offering me a job working for their marketing department because she'd seen a bunch of my wildlife, nature photography, and figured I could learn other stuff.
Yeah.
So I started working there like a real job. And it was pretty much my first real job.
Yeah.
Year round.
9 to 5.
Yeah, 9 to 5, or sunset to 5,
Right.
whatever, or sunrise to 5. So I started working there and that was shooting every day, real job. And that was the first time.
Houses and vacation rentals and stuff like that?
So the real job was they had a real estate company and they had golf courses and it was a beach resort.
Okay.
So the real job is providing the marketing department with, first off, the real money part of it was all their real estate listings. So you shoot their houses, the views, and these are little villas up to $10 million beach homes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the real part of it. Then you shoot stuff for the golf courses. Then you have to shoot events at the golf courses and stuff, that was horrible for me. That was like going back to the ski resort.
Right.
But then in the meantime, she was like, this resort is known for its nature, its wildlife. So you just go do your thing all the time. So we have that stuff. So I was just out every morning at sunrise shooting wildlife, nature, on the beach, in the marsh.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really where I figured it out. I would be out there and I'd take my canoe out and go out in the marsh and just tail and redfish. So I started shooting tail and redfish like they were birds.
Yeah.
Just shooting them like it's wildlife. And that was kind of when I first figured out something. I was like, well, this is kind of maybe how I can get into shooting stuff for fishing.
Yeah.
And I just shot a ton of that. And then I kind of threw in some fishing too. But I didn't have a whole bunch of fishing friends. So it wasn't like I was shooting many people fishing.
Right.
It was mostly just me.
And is there a market for any of this fishing photography at that time?
Not a whole lot that I could find.
Yeah.
But I did end up, I think kind of the first things I did with it was I got in touch with some magazines. And at that point, the only way I could figure out to sell them anything was to sell them a whole article. So I had to write some articles, about fly fishing in Charleston. And at that point, I kind of knew some stuff, enough that I could BS my way through it.
Yeah.
Like, here's how you catch fish on fly here.
But you're getting published?
I got published a couple of times and I was writing and shooting and it's kind of where it started, I guess.
Right.
And
then now you're shooting for all kinds of, you shoot for all our stuff.
Yeah. And so I did that and I had a website for all my stuff. And then you called me one day out of the blue. And
that's what I found was your website. That's what I was saying when you were peeing. Because I was trying to think, was it Instagram? It wasn't Instagram. I know
because you made me get on Instagram.
I know. I was like, Jason, you don't do Instagram? It might have
been Facebook, though. I was on Facebook.
Yeah, I think it was your website.
It might have just been the website.
But I was surprised. I was really surprised that you weren't embracing the Instagram. I'm like, dude, this is your thing. Like, this is your place.
Yeah,
you
at
can
that
crush
point,
it here.
At that point, I was just like, Instagram it's a place for people that aren't photographers to pretend like they're photographers.
Well, it is definitely
or
that.
to coach photographers' pictures.
But it's also a place for people that appreciate photography to go and find new photographers.
Well, it's funny because I had been on places like that on websites just when I was working at Kiowa, and just for inspiration, there was a lot of places online at that point. I think that was before even Instagram, where you could just go and just kind of peruse through,
Right.
hundreds of thousands of pictures. And I needed that at times, when you're like, how do I shoot another house and make it look something, or,
Yes.
Another beach sunrise and make it look different.
Mhm.
So I just kind of go through for inspiration. And now that's kind of what I do with Instagram now,
Yeah. And you can follow all kinds of interesting photographers, and you can follow the people that, like we were talking about, that do the wild editing, and you can you can find people that shoot nothing but black and white, and you can find people that are shooting nothing but video, and find all of this different stuff. But I don't know. What do you think is the future of photography? Because there for a little while, I thought photography was dying.
No, I had a lot of people, because over the 5 or 6 years I've been working with you, I don't work with any photographers, but I work with a lot of videographers.
Right.
And, a lot of them, you're on a boat with a bunch of dudes all day. You give each other crap, So I like to give videographers crap about video.
Uh-huh.
And they like to give me crap about, photography being dead. It's all about video. And if you go online, everything's video, video, video now. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think photography's fine.
Well,
it's going to stick around.
I know this, that photography is not dead. But there were those times, like when you first started working with us, we didn't know what we were doing with the photos, and Instagram was certainly not what it is today.
Yeah.
And we just had no idea. I just knew that photos were important and we needed them. And the more we could have, the better. Had no idea what we were going to do with them. None, really. And I think that there was a serious dip in photography, and everything was moving to video.
It was kind of
especially
when they started figuring out how to put video online and on social media all the time. Everybody was like, okay, we don't need photo anymore.
Right.
It's all going to be
But
moving.
don't you also think that when the DSLR camera started shooting high quality video, now people are buying those same cameras that you're buying to shoot only video?
Yeah, it's weird.
I mean, I saw that happen, and I was like, what?
And I've never even switched mine on to the video.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, does that shoot good videos?
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's what I ask you about your GoPros too.
Yeah,
I don't know. No one's going to shoot video with this one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, the video guys are always like, oh, can you use your GoPro and take some videos? Like, I wouldn't know how.
Yeah. Well, you think that the photography is healthy and growing?
Yeah. Well, I do. I mean, I think photography is going to be just fine. It's going to be around. It's not going anywhere. And if more photographers want to switch over to video, that's fine. I'll pick up the slack.
Yeah. Well,
I
think it's increasing in maybe not in popularity, but in importance. I think that photography, high quality photography.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fan of high quality photography. I like it. I think that it speaks volumes when you see it. It tells a story about the organization, or it tells a story about something that you don't necessarily get all the time with video. Now, I like video too, but I find that it's really super important, and to have the images also.
Yeah, I think in some way photography kind of sits with you a little longer, and you got to think about it and stuff. And video, and maybe I'm more thinking about how it all is on the internet, but video you look at, you watch it, and then it's kind of over and you move on, where a photo kind of sits with you a little longer.
I think it does. I think it stirs your imagination more when you see that photo. I always wonder how they got that photo. The incredibly close redfish tailing or something like that. I
can tell you that.
Yeah, I know. It's his trick. Why don't you tell me? How do you do it?
Well, I think for a long time, every redfish tailing shot you ever saw, you can tell it's with a wide angle, and it's with somebody holding the redfish by the face with one hand and holding it underwater so the tail sticks up and shoots it. So if you can see the background spread out and it's kind of clear, you can make out stuff in the background. That's somebody holding a redfish tail up in the air. Where if you see it and it's shot with a long lens, everything else is blurred out except the tail is clear. And I don't think, 10 years ago, not a lot of people shot anything except for the fake ones. Yeah.
I had an experience with David McLeaf one time, who is also one of my favorite photographers.
Yeah, mine too. He gets some crazy, the tails they get there where he lives.
David's so good. And yes, that's the situation. So we go out and it's the sunset and that tailing situation. And I'm used to flamingo redfish. Like, they freak out when if you go close
Yeah.
to them, or maybe they just sit there motionless, and if their tail goes away, then you can't find them again, right? But these are just tailing like crazy. And so David is like, "Hey, you stay right here, and I am going to slowly go all the way around this school." And I
Mhm.
believe that he said he had never done it successfully before, but we'd already gotten some good pictures, and he's like, "The light's gonna be perfect. It's gonna be great. Let's try this." I'm like, "Whatever, man. I don't need to catch a redfish."
Yeah.
And I watched him walk all the way around that school so slowly, like a ninja.
Yeah.
And then here's the school between me and David, and he just got some amazing
Yeah, he's
shots,
got
and then
so
I
many of those,
actually
it's
catch him.
crazy.
Yeah, no, he's got it worked out now.
Yeah, he's
At the
got the
time, it
whole
was like, "I don't
situation
know
dialed
if
in.
we're gonna be
Yep.
able to do this or not." Yeah, I couldn't figure out how he was doing that. I also still can't figure out how Jason Arnold is taking the underwater pictures of the fish, chasing after the jigs and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
there's something there. I think
Yeah,
I
we're gonna
think
have to have Jason on
the
here
fish are
too.
chummed, I think.
So you could chum them all you want. I mean,
You
there
got to
could
chum
be
all
a
you want, and then you got to, I mean, have the skills that he has to be in the water motionless and,
I don't know how he does it.
you
I'm gonna
know,
have to ask him.
have to get the
He
fish
told me
close
there's
to
a
you.
trick, and he would tell me.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I
he's gonna
saw
tell
that trick
everybody,
online. Yeah, I
but,
don't know if he's going to tell it on the air.
yeah, he might not. All right, man. Well, three things that you would do differently. You told your whole story, and you have actually made it, and in some ways, you made it in a roundabout way. And in other ways, it's fairly direct. Like, you decided you're going to do this, and it might have taken a little while, but you actually accomplished those things. And in a roundabout way, you kind of bounce around a lot of different things and find what I see is truly your calling is the type of work that you're doing now. I mean, it's exceptional, and it's really incredible. So, three things that you would do differently.
3 things, huh?
Yeah. Somebody walks up to you and says, "Man, I want to do just what you're doing." You say, "Don't do this, or this, or this, or do this." I don't know. What are the three most valuable things that you could tell somebody right now?
I don't know. That's hard because they all kind of lead you to where you are. I mean, in my fishing world, I always thought I wanted to be a fly fisherman, and I think I would always try when I was out in Colorado before I met the sheetrocker who taught me how to do it. I would always go with a spinning rod and a fly rod, and I'd fly fish for 5 minutes.
Mm.
Didn't work.
Yeah.
Grab the spinning rod. So I would probably not bring that spinning rod.
Okay.
Um, Another thing,
Learn how to throw a cast net? I don't know.
I do need to learn how to throw a cast net. I'm horrible, but I get it done,
Yeah.
sort of.
What about on the photography side? What if you
I
were
would-
going to tell somebody right now they want to be a great photographer? What do they have to
Well,
do?
I think you got to learn the basics. Doing a class. I mean, I went to school for a long time, but I almost learned as much as I could when I got a real job and had to figure stuff out and was like, okay, I need to go on. I mean, now you can just YouTube anything. Back when I did it, we had to pay for some class. There was online classes you could take. And I
Right.
learned so much doing Photoshop classes like that. And I actually went to, Photoshop seminars where you'd go do 3 days of intense stuff where,
Isn't that because also that Photoshop didn't exist when you were taking these classes in college?
yeah, no, there was no computer. None of it
Right.
was computer.
So, I mean, you
So I
missed
learned
your
the base
window.
there.
Yes. Yeah, you're learning
to
your
do it in
base.
school. Correct.
Yeah. And then now this is a whole new world.
Yes.
You got to learn all this stuff.
Well, and I think a lot of kids are probably learning a lot of Photoshop in school, which is great. But I think learning it from people who do it for a living in the real world is probably a lot better for you.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that'll teach you how to do something better than anything is getting in over your head at a job where people are paying you to do something and going, okay, if I want to keep doing this, I better figure it out or I'm not going to be getting a paycheck next week.
Right.
And that's happened to me a few times,
And that's where
even working with you. And I was like, okay, let's figure out how to shoot out of a drone, let's
Right.
fly a drone and do that. Cause if I'm not doing it, somebody else is going to be doing it.
That's right. But you've gotten really good at it. So that's where you have actually gone into the video world a little bit. Drone.
Well, I bought it for photos, but
but we don't let you shoot photos. Well, that's cool, man.
Something I got to figure out is how to switch it back and forth.
Getting in over your head. So I don't know. Pretty remarkable story, man. You went from homeless to pretty much right at the top of the world.
Yeah. It's been good.
Yeah. Well,
can't really call it. I'll call it camping.
Glamping.
It wasn't very glamorous.
All right, Jason. We're going to cut this off right now, but I'm sure that you will join us again and tell us some more of your stories, because Jason's always my roommate on our shoots, because he doesn't bother me, and he doesn't tell me that I bother him.
Well, you go to sleep at like 7, so you don't bother me for the rest of that time.
I know. You can just sit there and do your Photoshop.
Yep.
And I'll be snoring. Anyway, well, thanks for listening into this, and I hope you got something out of Jason's story. If you did, please go to the iTunes and rate and review the show, and send it to one of your friends that wants to be a photographer. And you can see all the steps that it takes to make it as a photographer, as a working photographer. I think would you say you have to be a bartender at some point to be a working photographer?
Sure, it helps.
Sure helps. Well, you have a lot of good skills.
Because you're not making any money when you start.
Yeah, so. It takes a while. All right, Jason, we gotta get to bed early so we can go catch some giant trout with Will Taylor tomorrow.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope you got something out of that. Got just a little bit of news. We have started a weekly show that is designed to be up-to-the-minute videos of what's happening this week, mostly in the Florida Keys, but also in other places that we fish as well. We'll be putting that out every week, and the best way to find that is to subscribe to the YouTube channel, YouTube/Saltwater Experience. Search Saltwater Experience on YouTube. Subscribe to that channel, and you will get updates of when a new video is published. I've also figured out how to put the podcast on YouTube, finally. A lot of people like to put that window behind other things they're working on and listen to the podcast while they are working. So we now have that for you, and there is a playlist called Podcast. There's a playlist called Weekly Show. You can go and see all the new videos that we're putting up there. Started a new email address specifically for this show, and that is podcast@saltwaterexperience.com. podcast@saltwaterexperience.com. Those emails come directly to me. I'll see every single one of them. So if you have comments, suggestions, ways we can make the show better, and particularly if you have suggestions of someone you would like to see me sit down with in the hunting world, in the fishing world, in the outdoor sports world, or just a motivation, inspirational character, or someone that can teach us all something, I'm very interested in your suggestions. So that's podcast@saltwaterexperience.com. You can get the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, and we're also publishing it on the blog. The weekly show will be published on the blog too, but the best way is to go to YouTube, subscribe there, and you'll get it immediately when it's published. So until next week, thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.